The Allen Lund Company appreciates all of the dedicated carriers it takes to move loads across the U.S. Stay safe.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Scott Thompson.
Thanks for joining us today. Scott Thompson here, filling in for host Mark Reddick while he's away. We've got a great conversation coming your way here in a bit, and it has to do with electronic logging devices. When the mandate began some years back, so did the concerns about what hackers might be able to do if they were to gain access. And now we know it can be done because it has been done. Researchers at Colorado State University recently hacked an ELD and took control of a commercial truck in what they're calling the first ever wireless drive-by attack. Jeremy Daly, Jake Jepson, and Rick Chatterjee joined the program to talk about how they did it, what happened when they did, and what the implications could be for trucks, fleets, and even the supply chain as a whole. Then we'll close things out by visiting with Brent Hutto of Truckstop. He knows it's important and tough to create profitability in today's market conditions. Brent has a few ideas for owner-operators on that front, and he'll also tell us how all three equipment types did on the spot market this past week. Lots to get to today, but first the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Scott. We are just days away from the tax deadline. We recently spoke with Shasta May of MBA Tax and Bookkeeping about the importance of ensuring you're doing your taxes correctly and reviewing all of your numbers. She spoke about some of the consequences of an inaccurate filing and what that could mean.
Well, several things. We would essentially be filing, an accurate return. And the worst of it is you could potentially be paying more income tax than you owe. Because if there are things missing on that profit and loss statement, like with our client where we saw things that weren't picked up and they were some large expenses. And if we had just filed and everything looked fine, we think it looks pretty when it's all done. It looks like it's accurate, all printed out in a nice format. When it's incorrect and something's missing and you just file it as is, you could be paying a lot more money. If you do find the error after the fact and the return has been filed, your only option then is to file an amended tax return. I really don't like to file amended tax returns. It really has to be, the benefit has to really outweigh the negatives. Because when you file an amended tax return, the amended tax returns really get scrutinized. When you're filing your initial return electronically, it just goes off with, millions of other tax returns, and it really doesn't pop up for a look unless there are some red flags on there. With an amended return, those are physically looked at when they're filed because they've got to compare. We're showing everything on the original return, and then we're showing them all the changes in a second column on that return.
She adds that it's important to put the extra work in and review everything before filing, even if that means filing an extension. The tax deadline is Monday, April 15th. July 7th through the 13th will be the dates for the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance's Operation Safe Driver Week. The initiative of this week is aimed at safe driving enforcement and outreach to improve driving behaviors through educational and traffic enforcement strategies and driver interactions with law enforcement. Throughout this week, law enforcement personnel in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. will be on the lookout for commercial motor vehicle drivers and passenger vehicle drivers engaging in unsafe driving behaviors such as speeding, distracted driving, following too closely, or driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The focus area for this year's Operation Safe Driver Week is reckless, careless, or dangerous driving. New Jersey is the latest state to adopt move-over rule revisions. Historically, move-over laws have been put in place for emergency personnel. Now, more states are expanding to include vehicles such as road service, utility, and tow trucks. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy recently signed into law a bill to expand move-over protections to any vehicle along the roadside. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is among the groups that have long advocated to include large trucks and others in this common sense rule. The new law requires drivers to move over when approaching a disabled vehicle with flashing hazard lights, road flares, or reflective triangles. If changing lanes is not possible, drivers must slow down below the posted speed limit. Violators would face fines between $100 and $500. A grim outlook for transportation infrastructure in Mississippi. The Mississippi Transportation Commission held a press conference this week to address critical funding needs resulting from inadequate revenue and increased costs. Commissioner Charles Busby with the Southern Transportation District says without increased reoccurring dependable funding, their infrastructure is in jeopardy.
The primary source of this funding is fuel tax, which remained unchanged at 18.5 cents per gallon since 1987. Today's vehicles have greater fuel economy, which means that individuals today pay less to drive on our roads than they did in 1987. If you had a half-ton pickup in 1987, you would have paid about $264 in fuel tax through the year. Today, you would pay $185. The increased usage, we have 300,000 more vehicles on our roads today than we did in 1987. The increased usage, low revenue, and inflation are creating a dire situation for our infrastructure. One-time monies provided by our legislature allowed us to begin capacity projects again that have been shelved for 10 years due to lack of funding. Without sustained funding, this program will once again have to be halted. The cost of maintaining our system has risen with inflation like everything else. The lottery funds from the 2018 special session are helping, but we still fall woefully short on the dollars needed to keep our roads in good repair. Allowing roadways and their beds to degrade to the point that both must be replaced will be a financial deficit that is insurmountable.
Busby said he would implore the legislature to find creative ways to avert this crisis. The total cost for all future projects is estimated at $9 billion. Abundant parking took the #1 spot for the top truck stop amenity truck drivers look for. Trucker Path recently surveyed more than 500 drivers, asking them what their top picks for truck stop amenities are while on the road. Drivers picked their top 3 choices from a list of 13 items. 86% chose parking, 67% picked clean showers, and the third top response was on-site restaurants, with 46% opting for those. Other top amenities included healthy, fresh food selection, 24/7 truck maintenance services, and high-speed diesel pumps. The amenity that got the fewest votes, at only 8.6%, was self-service checkout. 2 new terminals have been opened by Saia LTL Freight. One of the terminals is in Garland, Texas. The other is in Missoula, Montana. According to Globe Newswire, Saia's terminal in Texas will be the 21st facility for the carrier in that state. The terminal in Montana will be the first there for the company. The executive vice president of operations for the company was quoted saying these terminals were built or renovated to enable them to provide their customers with enhanced service so they can meet their supply chain needs. Saia LTL Freight currently operates 196 terminals across the U.S. And finally, it wasn't just humans who took in Monday's solar eclipse. UPI reports that a man and his pet chicken in Arkansas are getting lots of attention for a photo of them both taking in the rare sight. Tad Fenley was pictured watching the eclipse with his chicken Gertrude in his arms, both of them donning a pair of eclipse protection glasses. Fenley told a local news station that his chicken was so excited by her first solar eclipse that she laid an egg during the event. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. For updates on these stories and more from the trucking industry, check out our website, landline.media. From reporting and opinion pieces to pretty much anything in between, check it all out at landline.media. Coming up next, we'll welcome in the 3 researchers from Colorado State University who successfully hacked into an ELD, took control of a commercial truck and brought it to a stop, and it wasn't even that hard. We'll have the details on how they did it, what you can do to protect yourself and your truck, and what the implications could be for fleets and the entire supply chain as a whole. So stick around. We've got more Landline Now right around the corner.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. We recently told you about a new research paper that exposes some serious concerns about the cybersecurity of electronic logging devices. Researchers at Colorado State University say they found vulnerabilities that allow hackers to take control of a commercial truck, steal data, or even disrupt entire fleets. Using commonly available ELDs, the researchers were able to gain access to them via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, pulling off what they call the first ever wireless drive-by attack on a truck. I was curious about the research and the implications for an industry that obviously relies heavily on the devices, so I recently hopped on Zoom and asked them a series of questions to get a better idea. The team is comprised of Jeremy Daly.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Daly, and I teach systems engineering at Colorado State University. I'm an associate professor in that department.
Rick Chatterjee.
Hello, my name is Rick Chatterjee. I'm a graduate student in the systems engineering department at Colorado State University, and my area of research is mainly cybersecurity of heavy trucks.
And Jake Jepson.
I'm also a master's student here at Colorado State University. I'm also a graduate research assistant for Dr. Daly, and I primarily focus on the cybersecurity of heavy vehicles.
So I want to start by asking you, this clearly is a very specific topic. I'm curious about how and why you decided to kind of go down this path, study the vulnerabilities of ELDs in particular on commercial trucks. How did it start?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, you're right. It is a very specific thing. So in my career, I'd started in mechanical engineering and did traffic crash reconstruction, which led to digital forensics. And so it forced us to really look hard at the things that are in a truck that, could potentially be, taken over by an adversary. And so when you have a truck that by itself is fine and an ELD, electronic logging device that is not necessarily part of the design flow from a manufacturer, and you put those two together, you can have emergent behavior. And so we knew you could get things, if you had access to the CAN bus, you could send messages and, like override the accelerator pedal. And then recognize that when these ELDs have, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, if there's a possibility that that can be subverted, then it could really change the way your truck behaves and you have no effect over it. So it was just a curiosity. And we saw the regulation come out years ago, like before, Jake and Rick even joined. And there's been some research that, even there was what's called a DEF CON presentation where hacker actually, explained this is likely going to happen someday because these are not very, secure. And that was in 2017. And so we just, I guess, had the opportunity to, look at some. Honestly, it was kind of my prompting, and I bought one. It came in the mail, and I delivered it to Jake, and I'll let him kind of tell you what he did with it after that.
Sure. He ordered one, and I just popped it open. We started looking at it, and kind of right away, something was off a little bit. I was looking at the product, and you could tell that if one of the things that you first start when you have these is you just start doing research on them. What are the other devices out there? What are common features, traits, things like that? And we were kind of seeing this same one pop up a bunch. And we quickly noticed that it's a interesting market. There's a lot of a lot of devices that are just basically relabeled by a different reseller, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that could indicate that you have many more companies that are touching this product, and is everyone ensuring the same level of security and integrity in what they're doing? That was kind of what we were hoping to find out. So I just started taking it apart, looking at it, and one thing led to another.
So you're kind of talking with somebody here who can barely figure out how to operate a smartphone most days. You said there that one thing led to another. What does that mean exactly? What did the process look like specifically?
Yeah, so these devices, they're what we classify an embedded device. They have they have essentially many similar components that your computer might have on it, but they're all scaled down, and it's typically only going to run a single program on it. And what we're interested in is basically stress testing that program, figuring out, are there any bugs? Are these bugs just something small, or can they be used in a malicious way? Not just that, you also want to look at, have they set up this device properly? Is it, are they using the industry recommended best practices and things like that? And so one of the next steps I did after taking it apart was extracting the data from it, and which would be this software, this firmware. And I have a bunch of tools to start kind of looking through the firmware and seeing different aspects about it, how it works. And the longest part is figuring out how that software actually works.
And we're certainly going to walk through that. But I'm curious, you mentioned their recommended best practices. Security requirements right now on ELDs, I mean, they're pretty minimal, right? I mean, is there language? Are there rules, regulations in preventing hacking on these devices at all? I mean, what does that look like right now as we sit here and talk?
Yeah, I'll try to tell a little bit more on the backstory with this, because the regulation itself, came out in I think 2015 or so, went into effect 2017. And there was a concern about the security of the data. But this is from after it's been collected, and didn't really care about the device or the truck itself. The other issue associated with it was there's no real enforcement mechanism. So ELDs are self-certified according to the Federal Register entries, and so there's no real check on it. Now, the National Motor Freight Traffic Association, NMFTA, they have pursued trying to improve the cybersecurity of the trucking industry. And they came out with a list of recommended security requirements for telematics and ELDs, right? And I can say very confidently that if that guidance had been followed from the industry, then we wouldn't have been able to demonstrate these exploits that Rick and Jake developed. So to answer your question, the government has not put any regulations in place that will improve its security, but the industry has certainly recognized that and filled the gap with guidance.
I want to talk to you about that as well. That's one question I have for you too, but I want to kind of walk us down the path of your research, right? So as you mentioned there, Jake, you disassemble this ELD, you kind of get an idea of, how it works and operates and what it's supposed to do, and maybe, all that entails. Throughout your research, how long did it take before you found a vulnerability, and what was that vulnerability that first popped out to you? How did you get to that point, I guess is my question.
So one of the things we noticed right off the bat was the frequent use of default credentials on it. So this, one of the ones that we mentioned in the paper, was the default Wi-Fi password. And that isn't necessarily a vulnerability by itself. Those are some things that can act as like stepping stones. So in order to do the attack that we demonstrated with the video, I did have to spend many months crafting a basically malicious version of the firmware to show that it's possible. But because of things like the default passwords, because they were so prevalent and they didn't end up getting changed pretty much ever, that's what kind of allowed us to take a further step and to look at actually building that malicious firmware. So we knew about the default passwords pretty soon. It was within I think a week or so after getting it. But to actually make a full proof of concept does take longer.
That is fast, and what that tells me is that if there is somebody out there who has ill intent and wants to hack a truck or, do whatever it may be, it wouldn't be that hard for a professional to do that. Would that be an accurate statement?
I think the challenge varies with device. I don't want to say that there's a blanket statement for them being able to hack trucks. We've seen a great response from the industry over the years. But in certain cases, there's some formidable adversaries with quite a bit of resources that can do some pretty impressive stuff.
Walk us through what happened. What can you do if you gain this capability?
So we learned that the ELD is not checking the firmware, at least the authentication or integrity of the firmware that we're uploading to it. Integrity past the basic checksum checks on it. What this means is that we are able to flash our own code to it and get it to do things that we want it to do. And as soon as we figured out this, this became the main goal, because if you can get it to run whatever you want it to run, and you can perform this update and get it to do this all wirelessly, then you could perform this wireless drive-by attack. So what actually occurs in the video is we are driving up alongside the truck. I connect to its Wi-Fi network, and I initiate an over-the-air update. So think about just like a computer or phone getting an update. That's essentially what I'm doing to the device. But I'm uploading a malicious version of the firmware that I've modified to basically what it does. It's going to disable the accelerator pedal. It's screaming at the engine to go to 0% torque. And it was keeping Rick, he could press on the accelerator pedal as much as he wanted to, but it wouldn't respond.
Wow. Okay. So essentially you're taking over the truck. You've hijacked it essentially wirelessly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And is that as simple as it is? I mean, is it as simple as just, turning the truck off? Or can you do more with that? I mean, could you make it speed up? Could you do anything else that would, be a safety hazard on the roadways?
I think there's the specific attack that we used, we could make it speed up if we wanted to. These types of attacks are not going to all be work across all truck models, across all years. But the ones that we specifically did for trucks around the year that ours was made, I think it's 2014 or 13. A lot of those were still vulnerable to this type of attack at that time.
Rick, I want to get you in here. Talk a little bit about your role in all of this. I think Jake mentioned there that you weren't driving the truck, but what exactly were you doing through all of this?
So basically, my part was helping out throughout this research with some of the reverse engineering and some of the malicious exploits that Jake came up with. And we did the drive-by attack wirelessly, and I was the person in the cab, so you can imagine it was not that fun.
That's Rick Chatterjee, graduate student at Colorado State University, talking about the moment control of the semi he was driving was wrested from his hands. We've got to take a break right now, but we're going to pick up this conversation again when we come back. We'll get into worst-case scenarios, including what someone with bad intentions could do with these capabilities within an entire fleet or even on a grander scale. And we'll also get into what the research team did with their findings, what you can do right now to improve your protections against such an attack, and more. All of that coming up after the break, so stick around. Landline Now is back in just a moment.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. With more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibratechtvd.com. It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back to Landline Now. When we left you last, Rick Chatterjee, graduate student at Colorado State University, was telling us about his role in the research project that essentially hijacked an ELD, allowing them to take control of a commercial truck. Here's what that sounded like that day as Jake Jepson, fellow grad student at the university, walks us through what he was able to do in this YouTube video.
We drove up alongside the truck. We reflashed the electronic device, which is running its stock firmware, with a malicious firmware that will slow down the truck once it starts executing. We were successful in this attack. The car drove up alongside it. About 30 seconds later, the truck begins to slow down and the car pulls out ahead. Since it's a wireless attack, it gives us the freedom to explore creative attack vectors, including flying a drone. Critical infrastructure is becoming more and more connected, including trucks. One of the reasons is due to the ELD mandate. And when the ELD mandate first came out, it did not have much security in it. It could use many security improvements.
And again, when we left you, Chatterjee was telling us what that very moment was like from his perspective. We'll pick up the conversation now with Chatterjee, Jepson, and Jeremy Daly, Associate Professor of Systems Engineering at Colorado State University.
So basically, my part was helping out throughout this research with some of the reverse engineering and some of the malicious exploits that Jake came up with. And we did the drive-by attack wirelessly, and I was the person in the cab, so you can imagine it was not that fun. And later on, like throughout the research, we also came up with the proof of concept 2, which was basically trying to make a wormable exploit of this attack, which is basically where a malicious payload, as Jake mentioned, could basically propagate from one ELD to another and spread across a network of trucks that are out there on the road. So that was what I helped with and helped develop and code up. We did test it out on a development board and not on the actual device, though, to maintain some safety concerns. So that was my part in it.
That brings up a great point, though. Obviously, with this, you were able to gain access to that one truck. As you kind of mentioned there, Rick, there is a possibility, it sounds like, of taking control there and expanding that out to an entire fleet. Is that right? I mean, if you can kind of find that vulnerability in one truck, that means you've kind of got a way into the others. Is that in any way accurate?
So as Jake mentioned, that there are a lot of trucks out there on the road, and there are a lot of these similar ELDs. So the idea is basically that these ELDs allow you to not only connect to one ELD, but they act as a station, basically, where you can connect over Wi-Fi to another ELD. And doing that, basically one ELD which has the malicious code in it can basically upload its own code to another ELD, which is running the same kind of hardware. And that way it can spread from one truck to another, which is running the same ELD, and then go across an entire fleet, basically.
This was probably the realization that this was wormable, where it could go from truck to truck or ELD to ELD. It gave us that pause. It was like, we really do need to let, the CISA, which stands for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, know that this has a compounding effect, right? It's not just a one-off, and it truly can spread. And the time, and I think you saw this in the video, really is only about 30 seconds for this to actually take place. And I drove through a truck stop and connected to an ELD when I was just in my passenger car. So these are in the wild, and trucks do congregate, obviously at fuel stations and at fleet yards and rest stops and so forth. So, plausibility of this with what Rick and Jake demonstrated was very real. And that's one of the reasons I think they won the best demonstration award at our vehicle set conference down at the NDSS symposium.
I want to go back to kind of worst case scenario stuff, because I think it's worth talking about so that people are aware. To catch a bad guy, you got to kind of think like them. So as I was watching the video and I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, yeah, you could do some real damage if you're able to, essentially, again, hijack one truck or even a fleet. The implications of this, if somebody out there, a bad guy, were to try this and actually be successful, what are some of the worst case scenarios that you can foresee with this capability? Going after this vulnerability there, what would that look like in a worst case scenario?
Yeah, so I think this is something that we're not really well versed to talk about, because it's kind of the purview of the Hollywood writers to imagine these types of things. We're very much interested in specifics, technical, solutions to these types of issues that come up. So I will leave it to your audience to imagine what life is like without trucks for a few hours or a few days or whatnot. I'd rather not speculate on that. I think we can all agree that it's a big deal to not have trucks.
I think that is a very safe statement. Yeah. You talked about solutions there. So what does that look like? And I know you've been in contact, as you mentioned, with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. I believe you also spoke with the manufacturer of this particular ELD that you did find vulnerabilities in. What are those conversations like? And if we are to, again, close this loop and come up with a solution to make sure that we are safer out there, what does that look like?
So that's a good question. So one of the things that we want to do, especially as researchers, is to do this ethically, right? And so there's this concept of responsible disclosure. And so very early in the process, once we realized that we weren't faking anything here, like this was all real, we reached out to both the manufacturer of the ELD and CISA, and gave a timeline about our intent to submit a paper for publication. And that paper was published in February. So this would be about 3 months or so earlier. And there was response, right? So like the fact that the vendor did respond was encouraging. And then after some more details, they kind of embraced the opportunity to develop a fix and a patch. And so at that time, we were in this disclosure window, where we can't really tell who it was, and because I certainly don't want to destroy anybody's business, but at the same time, I want to make sure there's a forcing function in place to prompt a solution, right? So that this vulnerability gets patched, and so they did. They responded, and they've even they've kept us kind of up to date. And they've even given us some firmware patches to fix, right? And we are not finished with the testing on that, but the indications are both from CISA and the vendor that they took this serious. And so the next step, when this is actually the really important part, and I think your audience is going to be a part of this solution, and that is you have to keep those electronic devices updated, because the patch is going to fix this, or very likely going to fix this. But in order to get it installed, there is likely going to be a manual operation that the driver has to do in updating the ELDs. So my hope is that those software updates are taken serious and they're executed, so we don't have this potential.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to emphasize there, I think. And that was one of my questions too, is that people listening to this, they're in their truck right now, perhaps listening. Updating the software sounds like step one. Generally speaking, that's good advice, but especially on something like this. Beyond that, is there anything that's in their control that they can do to make sure their ELDs are more secure? I mean, is it a Wi-Fi password change, or what does that look like?
I mean, if they do have the ability change away from defaults, that's obviously something you should do. But the other thing, and this is where truckers and fleets especially have some influence, and that is purchasing power, right? So a lot of trucks and ELDs are bought, in bulk, and there's a lot of money that goes into those things. And so a cybersecurity aware purchase can force contracting language. And so when our customers, when the truckers are asking the question, is this secure and how do I know? How can you prove it? Then those start prompting, the better engineering and the products that are not following good practices should get washed out of the market. So that's kind of my hope. I would rather see a free market solution to this than trying to have the government come in and regulate additional cybersecurity controls that may or may not work.
I got a couple follow-up questions for you guys. Rick, so you were in the cab when you basically lost control of the truck.
Yes.
You had no control. And anybody who's driven a truck knows that any loss of control, whatever it may be, is a pretty terrifying moment. Obviously, you were on a test course. You knew you weren't going to slam into a school bus or something horrible, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine even knowing that, did you have a moment of, oh, okay, this is scary? What was going through your head, I guess, at that moment?
So the attack is actually quite unique in that we could have actually sped up the truck or slowed down the truck by disabling the accelerator pedal. And what Jake decided to do was to disable the pedal so that the truck slows down. So that helped the panic, I would say. If we decided to speed up the truck, that wouldn't help the panic. But yeah, I kind of knew what was going on. So obviously, the expected behavior was to slowly brake and come to a stop. But it is always not fun when you lose control of a truck when you're driving down anywhere whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a terrifying. Even a car, but obviously in a potentially an 80,000 pound truck, it's even more terrifying. Jake, the research here, in essentially cracking this thing in, I think you said a week, which again for me is also terrifying because again there are hackers out there that are looking to take advantage of people and infrastructure and all sorts of things. Did you learn anything throughout your research, I guess, about the capabilities of, again, the bad guys out there and what they might be able to do with this type of information or this type of capability, again, to hack into an ELD? What kind of sense did that give you?
Yeah, this was my first, I guess, real life, reverse engineering project. I've done many other events and done some competitions that involve it, but this was a true, I guess when I say true real world case, that means that you're going into it not knowing whether or not it's something you can do, and there's a lot to learn. And so I spent a couple months reverse engineering it, and that I definitely came out of it much better than I was before. But yeah, I would say if they are a professional and they do this on a daily basis, they would be able to do it a lot faster than I did.
Yeah. It feels like the wild, wild west in so many respects right now with all this new stuff coming out. Is there anything that, and this goes for Rick, Jake, Jeremy, is there anything I forgot to ask or anything that you feel is important to note here, maybe at the end as we talk about this whole thing?
I guess I'll say that my impression of the trucking industry as a whole is they actually do care about cybersecurity. And I think that the research we do helps underscore why it's important. All of our OEMs and most of our tier one suppliers come to events like the Cybertruck Challenge, where we actually build a community and work on developing the talent that's necessary to solve some of these problems that emerge. So I'm grateful to be a part of this kind of unique industry, and keep those ELDs updated.
We'll have to leave it there with that solid advice. Our thanks to Jeremy Daly, Rick Chatterjee, and Jake Jepson. If you want to check out the paper for yourself, we've got a link at landlinenow.com. Landline Now returns right after this.
Capital Reman, your leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Let us help you avoid costly downtime and repairs by visiting capitalreman.com today. Use code OOIDA10 to receive your member benefits.
Get the most power and performance out of your rig with Howe's Diesel Defender. It provides maximum lubricity and contains specialized IDX4 detergent to clean and prevent deposits and safely removes harmful water. Visit HowesProducts.com for more information.
Attention professional drivers, do you owe money to the IRS? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. Call for help now, 855-976-4291. That's 855-976-4291.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Ashley Blackford will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from Truckstop.com. Here's Ashley now with a report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Brent Hutto from Truckstop. How are you doing today, Brent?
Man, Ashley, I'm always great. Anytime somebody gets my last name correct as much as you do, I mean, I'm in good shape no matter what. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad that I can do that. I want to talk to you about current market conditions. How are things going?
Well, you know, it's the trucking industry, Ashley, and I'll tell you what, it's up and it's down, and if you expect it to always be, you know, just lollipops and fairy tales, it's not. It's just trucking. But the good thing about trucking for all of us that are in it, especially for owner-operators and small carriers that are out there listening to your program, we're necessary. You know, that's the most important thing I want to kind of put in everyone's head this week, which is we're necessary. So when something's necessary, then you find a way to create the profitability in it so you can kind of continue to do what you love to do, which in our markets, drive a truck. But there's a whole lot. There's some like ups and downs. Let's put it this way. So couple good signs. Last week, diesel went below $4 for the first time in quite a while, and so that's a good sign because that's the biggest cost for carriers is diesel fuel, the variable cost, and so that's a big deal. And then in the spot market where a lot of the small carriers, the owner operators, participate, and is that when they negotiate a contract to haul a piece of spot market freight for a broker or for a shipper, it's one load at a time. So there's no like fuel surcharge index, and it's just this is the rate, and we're going to negotiate it, and we're going to settle on it. So lots of good signs because fuel is a big part of that. Right now it's at 50 cents. The fuel surcharge is at 50 cents. So if you're a truck driver out there and you're not getting 6.5 miles to the gallon on your diesel fuel, then you're losing money against the fuel surcharge index. If you're getting more than that, which I hope you are, then you're getting better. And then there's some other things going on. And, you know, the regulations are always the biggest challenge in what we do, you know. So the pandemic was a different type of regulation, although it was a regulation. It caused a great market for us, but it wasn't something that was caused by, like, trucking regulations, which is normally what causes a good market for the transportation industry. So there's a couple things going on. The EPA is going after some more rules on cleaner trucks, and was a decision passed on March 29th about the greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles, and it's called Phase 3. You don't have to worry about what phase it is. Just know it's going to get harder and harder to it's not going to get harder. It's going to be more expensive to buy a truck. And so going forward, it's down the road. So it's going forward. So that'll change things. That's a regulation that'll hit our industry that'll make less trucks on the road. So truck prices will go up. And then the Department of Labor continues to go after the AB5 laws, the independent contractor status. So I know that's a big deal to Landline and OIDA, and it's a big deal to Truckstop too, because we want every truck driver to have the opportunity to run their business as they see it. And if they want to be a leased owner operator and work for one fleet, then fantastic. If they want to be an independent and they want to come out to the open market and haul for anybody they want to, then that ought to be their choice, and the government shouldn't determine that. And then when you look at the actual marketplace, we kind of still hanging in there. Freight rates went up a couple weeks ago. They came down a little bit, kind of 1 cent overall. Rates with fuel about $2.38 in the market. That's still difficult for profitability when you consider that that's with fuel. So take 50 cents out of that, and you'll see where kind of the rates are. So if you're an owner-operator, really negotiate the cost of fuel. And when you're talking to a broker, or you're talking to a shipper, talk about the cost of fuel and negotiate your prices higher. So that's one of your big advantages, because everybody understands that. The pressure in the marketplace has actually been really good for owner-operators. Normally pressure, the market demand index, which is a truck stop index, is normally around 50. That's been the balance after the pandemic. Well, it's been the 70s for 6 straight weeks. That's a big deal. It's a really, really big deal, because that means the marketplace is beginning, very slowly now, very beginning to kind of come back to a little bit more positive market for the small carriers in the marketplace and the owner-operators. So the overall, and the van rates decreased week over week. The last week of this week went down 4 cents. They go up and down all the time. Flatbed decreased a penny. Reefer went down 8 cents. So different market. But here's the thing: don't look at the averages. If you're an owner-operator, don't look at the averages. Go and understand the marketplace in which you work in or want to work in, and figure out the best rates there. Because there's lots of much better rates than I'm talking about here. These are just averages. There's tons of great rates. So know how to do searching on the load boards that you use, and we hope that you find the great success on that. And then there's just the overall contract marketplace continues to be real aggressive as well. So the freight, the percentages in the contract marketplace is called the Outbound Tender Reject Index, and that's an index you can look at. If you can, by the way, you can find it on another platform called FreightWaves. You can find it on there. It's an indicator of how good the spot market's going to be. And if it's 5% or above the amount of freight being rejected, then the spot market is going to be good and going to continue to kind of grow in its rate availability. But if it's below that, it's not. It's been below 5 for a long time. So the spot market right now, that's the indicator that the spot market is struggling. So that's the overall marketplace, Ashley. And I know I went on for a few seconds there, but that's kind of the overall sort of just where we are. We're sort of still at the sort of economic, right at the very bottom as it begins to start to trend back up a little bit.
What are some of the top regions and lanes from last week?
Oh, my goodness. Top regions and lanes from last week are going to be Salt Lake to Denver. So when you look at regions, I'm going to give some specific lanes, and it's just general areas. Like this is out west. Obviously, Salt Lake to Denver's kind of out west. And where I am today, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm at the big broker conference here. They're called the TIA Capital Ideas, and so I'll talk about that in a second. But Salt Lake, Phoenix to Houston, that's coming back, obviously back a little east. Phoenix to Salt Lake, that's big in dry van. And flatbed, El Paso, it looks like most everything kind of going west right now. And there's going to be you're going to see better rates in the west, anyways, because of all the independent contractor laws in California getting attacked. You're going to see more favorable freight out west, and kind of in the northeast as well. So you've got El Paso to Phoenix on flatbed, Laredo to Salt Lake, kind of in those areas, Los Angeles to Las Vegas, obviously out in the west. Refrigerated lanes, and even though refrigerated went down 8 cents, Houston to McAllen, that's an interstate, intrastate haul. Houston to Texas as well, far Texas, Las Vegas to Phoenix, kind of all west and south, sort of southeast. I'm from Alabama, so we consider Texas sort of part of the southeast as well, even though Texans don't believe that, and I understand why. But that's kind of the areas where you want to look. But my encouragement to owner operators is look. I mean, just look at the areas where you sense it, not sense, but you know by your searching that are going to traditionally be higher than others. So that's super important. Not just organize it by rate and take the top rate, because that's not always the best rate in that lane. And I realize that when you organize it by rate, it is, but you want to look at what's more repeatable for you.
What else should owner-operators and small fleets be aware of?
What I encourage carriers, and I do this all the time, when I'm speaking live, when I'm on a webinar, when I'm on a video, whatever, I always tell carriers, one of the best things you can do is go and find the best relationships for you. OIDA's a great relationship in the marketplace, and you guys have the great communication tool, Landline. So you're a great relationship to help them understand the market. Well, when you're a small carrier and you're trying to compete against medium carriers and large carriers who have a lot more sort of firepower than you do, your Jedi, your Jedi strength should be creating a relationship that's dependable with a number of brokers or a number of shippers or a combination of both, and get most of your freight directly from brokers, which you'll find a lot of them on the load boards. And look, they're not all great. Okay, I realize that, and not all carriers are great, but go and create those relationships, and you'll start to find that you'll get higher rates because they can transact with you faster.
All right, Brent, thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Ashley. Thanks for letting us be on, man. We love Landline, love what you guys do. We love how you serve the owner operator just like we do. We have the same heart for it, and we're here for you whenever you need us.
All right, wonderful. That was Brent Hutto from Truckstop. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.